Hi, this is Chuck Oliver. Welcome to this week's Taxes Saved Case of the Week. Now, this is an extension from last week showing the long-term tax savings impact by addressing strategic Roth conversions. What's strategic? Strategic in the sense that we're using allowed deductions all above board in the code that allow the non-representation of showing a higher income because the deductions are wiping out the conversions. And as a quick sidebar, there's no limit today under current legislative law of a maximum that you can Roth convert, but there are tax limitations. And this is why it's so important to have a proactive tax team that can properly guide you and shepherd you through this in having a retirement tax savings roadmap. So, Davis, let's finish up from last week and show people the long term effect because it's in the millions.
Yeah, this is an exciting one. The long-term effect had a much higher ROI than what we discussed last week. So stay in until the end on this one, and you'll see the excitement this client succeeded in ROI of long-term tax savings by doing strategic conversion with 181 movie investment deductions. So I'll go ahead and share my screen as we always do. And so you should see here we got the tax return from last week, right? And this was, again, going back from 24 of what they converted. So this is a 2-year impact of long-term tax savings, right? So they have over $1 million deduction on their $250,000 movie investment they made, right? And they used a good chunk of that last year, and they're going to and already have used the remaining chunk of that this year in forward-looking tax planning we did for them on Roth conversion. So you'll see what the tax risk they're facing in that tax credit account value here, Dad. They were age 65 in retirement. As you can see from the tax return, they have $1.4 million in tax deferred accounts. We assumed this money was going to grow at a meager 7%, which I think we can do a lot better than that, but being very conservative here. And they're at a 32% tax bracket just based on some of their capital gain income, pension income, dividend income, etc. Right? And so with that, right, this is the tax risk they were facing on this money, just on what we call the required minimum distributions, right? So if you were born before 1960, right, your age of RMD is age 73 when the government forces you to start taking this money out. And so for them, their first RMD is going to be age 75, being just born after 1960. And so here you can see here this first row, this is the ugly, right? They do nothing on this 1.4 million from age 75 to 90 over 15 years, 10 years from now, they're going to pay almost $1 million in taxes on just on the RMDs, what the government's forcing them to take out. And then the big cardinal sin, as we see all the time, as you know, Dad, is that most of our clients don't need this. They have other income they're living off of, assets, etc., but they want to beat inflation and they want to grow their money. So they go reinvest what the government forced them to take out, being that RMD, and that
Yeah.
gets hit with tax again. So that's what that second row is showing. And then the worst one, the big reason of why this client did strategic conversion with strategy over a 2-year fashion was the legacy tax risk, right? They did not want to leave this over almost 1.1 million, 1,072,000 of legacy tax risk, assuming these clients pass off at 90, right? So that's the life expectancy on this analysis. So for them, that's another, 25 years from now. But that 25-year, we're assuming tax rates are only going to be 32% for their legacy, which the likelihood of that is very slim. So very conservative variables. As you can see here, that tax risk would be $2,379,000, right? What they're going to face them and their legacy over the next 25 years. So back to what they did, right? Remember, $1 million movie deduction they're going to use over 2 years. They used that 610 last year, and they did a $343,000 Roth conversion outside of what they had of other income, as you see here on the tax return, right? And so we're now going to show you by them Roth converting 343,000, what the first year tax savings were long term by getting, again, this 1.4 is now after 343 converted 1,057,000, right? So same variables elsewise. Age is still there, right? Count, growth, and then tax liability. And here you can now see by Roth converting 343 just in those long-term tax savings, they went from basically to remind you, 2.379 to 1.796 of overall tax risk on these accounts now. So right there, about 600,000 of long-term savings just on that 343,000 of Roth conversion. And we're not done yet, right? Where it gets really exciting is this year and what we're converting. right? And then that's where they're now converting 700,000 of what remains of their 1,057,000. So now we're down, again, same variables, just 700,000 after what they've converted here in 25, 700 grand. They're now, at 357 of total account value. Again, same tax rates, same growth rate. And you can see here, look at this, from 2.379 all the way down a 2-year conversion plan to 600,000 of total legacy tax risk, a $1.7 million tax benefit of overall ROI just on the long-term savings, right? And so remember, the initial investment for $1 million deduction to do all this conversion without paying the tax was $250,000 to get that $1 million tax deduction in the movie investment they made. But now the long-term benefit on that $250,000 was 1.7 million, right? Plus all the tax savings they got last year and this year by just mitigating the income, right? Remember, if you see here on the screen, they paid zero tax with the big losses they had on the movie deduction last year, and very similar, very low tax bill they'll have this year with what deduction remains in the movie and how they offset that movie or offset the Roth conversion of 700 grand with the remainder of the movie. So strong ROI on this one. You can see the short-term benefits over a 2-year. They got their money back and then some, about 108%, to remind those that are listening here. But long-term, they got their money back in tenfold by protecting them and themselves and their legacy of $1.7 million of long-term taxes. So you can see here, Dad, this was an exciting one, and I'm sure you want to share some detail on what else they prevented themselves from.
Well, yeah, so first off, I mean, it's a 7x, right? I mean, they went from 2 point basically 4 right down to 600,000. That's a huge return on investment, but just a huge mental relief, right? That, they didn't want to leave some massive tax situation. Remember, you can't Roth convert an inherited IRA. You can't Roth convert an inherited IRA. And some people have reached us and said, I got this inherited IRA, help me Roth convert it. Now, this is where the discussions need to happen and the action needs to take place. So go to taxessaved.com. That's taxes, TAXES, saved, SAVED.com, and scroll down. And there's a place to request a saving tax optimization plan, just like these clients started down this road, because they wanted to know the tax risk road that they were traveling. And this is where it all starts, folks. You have to know where you're starting from, right? Before you can get to where you really want to go. And here's what this does. Not only can we prevent Medicare taxes, right, to your IRMA, what we call the Medicare Part B and D surcharge sneak attack taxes, but we also can prevent, let's say, 85% of Social Security being taxed. But the big thing is getting your income that you can pull from these types of Roth accounts tax-free out of the tax system and get your assets out of the tax system, but prevent your kids from getting massacred in the tax system. Folks, you work really, really hard for your money. It all starts with understanding where you are so you can determine what are the best actions like this client learned in their particular case or where they can go. And that's it. Again, at taxessave.com, just scroll down. You're going to see where you can request a saving tax optimization plan analysis. It's a complimentary meeting where we go through some of the strategies as we identify maybe in your profile of which strategies you would qualify for best, which ones would have the most impact. And at that point, you can really see your numbers, and it all starts with the math. But keep in mind, where this started, these clients were facing almost a $2.5 million tax liability. And when you think about that over the next 25 years, that ends up being about $100,000 per year. So the cost of waiting is extraordinarily expensive because by taking action over this 2.5 year period of time, they were able to mitigate that from 2.roughly 4 down to 600,000. And we still have long-term game plan with them to show them how to wipe out the remainder of that balance as well. So all of their money is tax-free. Taxessaved.com, taxessaved.com.